Yes, Nvidia released another variant of the RTX 3060, which was first released almost 2 years ago, and this time with 8GB of VRAM instead of 12GB. You won't find many people talking about this or even knowing that a 3060 8GB exists. The GPU was released about a month ago, and it is a bit cheaper than the original. Today, we will take a look at how this GPU performs and why you may consider buying the 8GB version instead of the 12GB version. And before you say anything, I strongly recommend watching this video till the end. So before we begin, I want to explain why I'm doing this video in the first place. I made a research and did not find a fair comparison between these two models. I mean, there are some you can watch, but they compare either different GPU manufacturers, where you have more variables than only the VRAM, like clock speeds for example, or they use an unrealistic system setup for benchmarking, which is right, but not always a good example of what you will get. For those of you who don't know, Nvidia re-released the RTX 3060, which was first released back in early 2021, but this time with less VRAM. Nvidia has been very misleading with the RTX 3060 8GB version, and customers don't even realize that there is a new RTX 3060 8GB out there to buy. Although it may seem the only difference is the VRAM, in fact there is more to it. As we see, although it has the same chip and most of the same specs are the same, the 8GB model has less bandwidth compared to the 12GB, thus leading in less frames per second in gaming. A positive fact is that it costs less than the original 3060, and the difference is about 10 to 15% less, depending on where you live and depending on the manufacturer of the GPU. How close in performance are those two when compared side by side in different games? We will find out in a second. For our tests, we will not go the traditional way of testing, but we will take a real-life scenario approach. The thing is that you need to understand how GPU and CPU benchmarks work, and in most cases, it is not the same effect in a regular PC setup, which the majority would go with. Let me explain. For instance, in order to compare CPU performance, you need to use the most powerful GPU available and drop the resolution at 1080p with low settings, which is something no one would ever do with an RTX 4090 and a 13900K, for example. It is exactly the same when benchmarking GPUs. You need to use the most powerful CPU available and bump the resolution and graphics up in order to eliminate any CPU performance limits. That is just how benchmarking and testing works, and you see all those FPS differences, although in practice, when you build a system, you may not even see any difference at all, because you would go with a totally different setup, which potentially will not have such a big impact on performance. So in our case, for example, we have the KFA2 RTX 3060 8GB and 12GB models. They are exactly identical as we see here, even the packaging is the same. They both have double 90mm fans, a backplate, same connectors, and same design. We will pair them with a Ryzen 5 5600X in order to see if it has any significant difference in performance or not. Let's take a look at some gaming benchmarks and catch you guys in a second. As we saw here, we had some games which are more GPU intensive and some others which are more CPU intensive, and in both cases the differences were very small and both GPUs were very close to each other. In fact, the difference was so small that it kind of explains the difference in price. Now, you may see bigger differences depending on the manufacturer of the GPU, but in our case with the KFA2 RTX 3060s, the performance of both cards was very close, and as we also see in the 10-game average chart, it only makes about 6 FPS difference on average. The biggest mistake from Nvidia was releasing a GPU with the same name and different performance, which is very misleading. In fact, most of you might not even know there was an 8GB version, or assumed the RTX 3060 only came with 8GB of VRAM, just like the 3060 Ti does. Now, why I think you should consider buying this GPU. For one reason, keep the cost of the build or upgrade as low as possible. You could invest the difference on a better CPU or RAM, for example, because ultimately that is also the reason why we keep testing and comparing the newest hardware out there. The RTX 3060 8GB model would still be a good upgrade for a more budget-friendly setup. The argument that the 12GB is better can also be used against the 3060 Ti, which, by the way, also has 8GB of VRAM, but is also 20% faster on average than the 3060 12GB. So it all depends on the occasion and what you're trying to achieve. I will leave some affiliate links in the description below in case you want to check current pricing of the GPUs. Thank you for watching our video. I hope you liked it and learned something new today. I hope I helped you make the right decision on choosing which GPU to buy. As always, do hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends. See you in the next one.